and welcome. My name is Brianna and welcome to my channel where I like to talk about plants, crystals, hair, astrology, and everything of that nature to promote spiritual healing and spiritual wellness. If you like that content, be sure to like and subscribe and be tuned for more. Now let's get into the video. So today's video is about astrology book recommendations. Okay, I have 5 books here that I recommend that anybody interested in astrology, reading birth charts, or even becoming an astrologer should have. I think that it's a really good beginner's, intermediate, and expert kind of guide. And huge disclaimer, by the way, astrology is very much jam-packed, right? So you go into astrology, you're just like, okay, I'm an Aquarius, right? Like, you're a mysterious Aquarius, right? So it's like, I am cold, supposedly, like this is what people have told me. I'm looking at the posts on Instagram and I'm looking at Aquarius memes. And then once you start actually digging deeper into astrology, you realize that that's your sun sign, that's your ego, right? That is your essence, your core, your sun, your solar plexus. That's where your sun is located. It's located in Aquarius. Like me, for example. But then you start digging a little deeper and then you understand that your subconscious mind, your emotional mind has a different sign. And that the mask that you wear to this world also has a different sign, right? Your moon sign and your rising sign, which can be completely different and contradiction to your sun sign, right? And then you're looking more and more into it and then you realize that there's this thing called a birth chart. And you're like, what's this? I see circles, I see geometry, I see triangles, squares, a little star that go like this. Like you see all these things and you get naturally confused because it's like opening a can of worms, right? You have aspects, you have orbs, you have to learn some sort of geography, right? You have to have passed some sort of geography to understand like the shapes, kind of, right? That's just a joke. You don't really have to understand geometry, kind of. And then you have to learn planets. So it's definitely can be intimidating at first, but luckily these book recommendations that I have, I think does a pretty good job at like breaking them down. Okay, so let's get into the book recs. So the first book recommendation I have is Astrology Using the Wisdom of the Stars in Your Everyday Life by Carole Taylor. Now, I wanted to get this book because it was cute, right? This was actually a book that I got after I started studying more about astrology, and I was surprised about how much more that it taught me about the planets and the houses specifically, because I feel like a lot of books often talk about like which planets are in which houses and then which signs are in the you don't need to know any of that if you don't have an understanding of the houses, the signs, and the planets. And this book does a really good job at understanding that. So for example, I have like some marked here. You have the planets in an overview, and then the next page that you go to, you have the sun, and then you also have Mercury, for example, right? You have Mercury here, and then all of these things explain Mercury in your chart, what Mercury in each sign means when you're talking about the planets. It's just such a really good book to understand these things. Next, a really good point about this book is that it has information about the houses, which signs and which planet rules each houses, and what having your sign or your planet in a house means and how that corresponds. So this is definitely a really good beginner starter book. And then it also has some other key things like relationships, friendships, career paths, anything, like any information at all about some indications of what the trajectory of this certain subject would look like in your life, right? So how to look for what relationships you will have in your birth chart or career that you might have. Really good beginner book, like I said, to learn the basics, right? This is straight up basics. Really good book. I'll leave the link in the description as all these books below. Next, I have The ultimate guide to astrology. Use the guidance of the planets to manifest your power and purpose by Tanaaz, Chubb. This book. In addition to having this first book, I think all these books work really, really well together. This book specifically goes in depth about having the signs within your chart, right? So exactly what I was saying earlier, like you see this chart, you see these signs, and you're just like, what's going on? What does this all mean? You know, you can use an astrology website as far as you can, but it doesn't matter if you don't understand where the information is based on that they're telling you. This book does a really good job at that. It goes through every single placement and discusses what each sign in that placement means. Really, really good book. Very much pairs with the first one. I suggest this one for all the other beginners as well. And it's not just, you know, my sign. It talks about the moon in Cancer or the moon in the fourth house. What does that mean? Moon in Leo. What does that mean? Has a really good indication of all of those things. Next, it also talks about the signs itself and what that indicates for the person that you're dealing with, right? Because something that you're going to have accustomed to thinking about if you are going to be an astrologer or if you want to be deeper in astrology, something that you're going to have to think of is, so this person says she's a Pisces, right? What does that mean? Why is that important to understanding who she is? And this book talks about that, right? If a person says, I was born in February 10th, your immediate head should go, okay, this person is an Aquarius. Let me see what that means about her, right? So just having that innate kind of like, this means this means that. It's a really good book for that. Well, it talks about your planets and which sign that they are in and what that indicates for who you are and how you might communicate. So, yes, really good book after the first one when understanding the basics. Let's get into the third book, shall we? The third book that I have is a godsend. Okay, this is how to be an astrologer. Everything you need to interpret anyone's birth chart for a complete, accurate, revealing astrological reading by the queen herself, Constance, Stellas. Now, okay, this book, I done marked up this book so many times you would have think it was like a canvas, child. Like it was a goddamn sketchbook, child. Like the way that I have marked up this book, but it is because this book is so good. Alright, this was the first astrology book that I got after receiving an astrology reading from one of my friend's mothers, and it honestly changed my life. I was like, how you know so much, child? Like, how like, you spying on me? Like, how you know so much? And I didn't realize that everything was there. Everything that she knew was there. It was in my chart. It was written in the stars. If you want to go that far to say, it was literally written in the stars, and I was just like, how did you know this? And one of my purposes that I believe of my purpose here on earth is to be a teacher. It's to be an educator, hands down. It's what I'm good at. It's what I am passionate about. I love teaching, regardless of what subject that it is, but specifically about spiritual wellness and spiritual development. Like, I have saved myself, I have found ways to heal, and I just want to do that for other people too. Anyway, mad sappy, like, anyway, back to the topic of hand. This book is a shit, okay? So, like I said, mark this book up to the gods, honey. This book, it tells you about, I'm talking too much and I'm not even talking about the book. So, yes, this is a step up from the other two books. The first two books are definitely beginner level. This is most certainly an intermediate level of understanding the planets, the signs, and what the implications are. This book tells you exactly how to read a birth chart and what that means. So for example, if I could find this page here, when you are talking about your signs, you're talking about the elements as well. So this book talks about the signs and what the elements indicate. So for example, if you are an Aries, you belong to the fire sign duplicity. That means that you also fall into a cardinal sign, which means that the start of a season is the best time for you, right? There's mutable signs that work well with the changing of the seasons, and then there's me, a fixed sign. Me no like change, me no like things that are gonna like mess me up. I don't do well with change. It's something that I'm working on, but yes, Aquariuses, we are fixed. We don't like to move around too much. And then it tells you what that means and how is that going to affect you. Next, it talks about the personal planets and their daily motions. Now, this is where astrology gets a little kooky, because not only do you have your signs in your chart, you also have the signs in the stars themselves, right? And this book begins to make you see that because, for example, let's say that you have, let me think for a second. Let's say that you have, I'll just use my sign as well. Let's say that you have the sun in Aquarius when you were born. Okay, your sun is in Aquarius, your moon is in Aries, like mine, and let's say your rising sign is in like Capricorn or whatever the hell. And then you notice that around summer, the end of summer, you notice that you're not as confident. Something seems like it's playing against you. That's because when you were born, the sun was in Aquarius, but right now, the sun is in Leo, which doesn't do well with people who have a sun in Aquarius. So you begin to learn that not only are the planets fixed when you were born, but the planets around you and every day are changing. And this book helps you understand that and what exactly that implies. Okay, so yes, it talks about the retrogrades, you know, the most famously, hold on to your wig, Mercury retrograde, you know, Saturn retrograde, which can have its own thing too. But yes, it talks about the planets, it talks about what they imply in your daily lives, right? So you have personal planets, you have your Mercury, your Venus, your Mars, your Jupiter, your Saturn, and then you have outer planets. You have Uranus, you have Neptune, and you have Pluto. And these are the ones that are changing your subconscious as they're moving. These are the ones that are pushing for upheaval. And this is what you will begin to learn as you read this book, because it definitely, you know, it changes, it shifts. And this is something that you will begin to learn, and that's why I really love this book. Regardless, it talks about karma, it talks about Vedic astrology, which is something that you're going to have to know and be somewhat familiar with if you plan to be an astrologer. But you have to know the roots, right? You have to know where this information comes from, and that's something that, you know, it comes with time, obviously. But yes, really good book for understanding stuff a little bit more complex, if you will. All right, book number 4. All right, book number 4. Astrological Transits, the beginner's guide to planetary cycles to plan and predict your day, week, year, or destiny. This is another book that I have marked up to the boards, honey. This is by Elliott Kent. Really good book. I cannot stress this enough. If you really want to become more understanding of astrology past yourself, right? So the first 2 books, even the third books, you're talking mainly about yourself. This book talks about the world's effect on you, the world's effect on the people who you're talking to. And this is just amazing. I love it so much. I have so many notes on this book. But just as the title implies, it talks about transits. And transits, you'll begin to learn, is the planets that move. Pretty much. They move and they change, and you will feel the change no matter what. So, This section specifically is talking about Jupiter. Look at how much information we're talking about with Jupiter transits. You have Jupiter in Taurus, Jupiter in Gemini, Jupiter in Leo, and these all just talk about what those transits mean. Then you have Saturn, right? So not only are we talking about Saturn and we have Saturn cycle, we're also talking about how long each planet stays in the sign for. That's very important because then you can plan your day. You can predict what will happen. You can predict your emotions when you start to learn that the moon is going to be in the same sign for 2.5 days. The moon is in Aries right now. I should probably watch how I talk to people. I should probably watch how impulsive I am. And then this book explains why that is. They also talk about what a return means, what a sign means when it returns to your sign. That's also really, really fun. But then it also talks about the houses, right? So we have house 4 and 10 here, and then it talks about what does it mean when you have different planets transiting that house, right, as it's moving. So if you have something moving at a very strong position within your sun sign, you may have a lot of issues with confidence or feeling as if you are lost and you don't have anywhere to belong. So that's definitely something that you want to consider. And lastly, I cannot find the page for the life of me. It talks about aspects, right? It talks about degrees. It talks about what a conjunction, opposition, sextile, trine, all these words mean that are very important for you to understand birth charts. And like I said, this is really, really good for predictions, right? Planning your days. You can even plan your year solely on this book, of course with further research, but definitely a really good book if you want to be an astrologer. I recommend is Cosmic Health. Unlock your healing magic with astrology, positive psychology, and integrating wellness by Jennifer Racioppi. I really hope that I said that correctly. This book ties together everything. Like I said, the first 2 books, what is going on with this piece of paper that I see in front of me? This is my soul. This is me. What does that mean? Okay, great. Now let's look at how me changes throughout the course of the year with the next slide, the number 3 and number 4. This book talks more about synthesizing all that information and what to do with it, right? So let's say, for example, you are going to be an astrologer and you do want to read birth charts. Okay, this person, her sun is this, her moon is this. Okay, well, when she is in Aries, or when the sun is in Aries, she's going to feel like this. Okay, what are you supposed to do with that information, right? This is a really good book for that. An amazing book for that. So it talks about the things that you can do for yourself or that you can do for others to help you get through difficult transits or just difficult times in your life. A really good example here is that it talks about the air sign Scorpio, right? Like you have a sign in Scorpio, you're mysterious, right? You can be dark, you can be edgy. Okay, none of that necessarily matters when you're talking about the true core of a person, right? So what are your strengths as a Scorpio? This book talks about that. What is your challenges going to be? This book talks about that. How can you care for yourself? What physical things that you should look out for? With this book and further knowledge, you begin to understand that the different signs have different implications for your health and how to take care of it. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, for Sagittarius it's your ankles. For Aquarius it's your nervous system. And for Scorpios it's your pelvic area, anything that has to do with the reproductive health. That's something to keep your eye on as you're moving through your life. So this book talks about all of that fun stuff and just how to navigate those realms. Next, it also talks about your rising signs and your moon signs and what that means as well, right? For example, if your Sagittarius is your rising sign, she got a list of what your strengths are. What areas of your life should you tackle with and how to tackle them with your rising sign in whatever sign that it is. This book is really, really good for that. Lastly, the thing that I think this book does a really, really good job at is to understanding how the different signs within your chart interact with each other. So for example, in this certain page and section, if you are an Aquarius sun sign with a Mercury in Aquarius, what does that mean, right? How does that interplay within your life, right? And then it has a little cute little affirmation, just like something to keep in mind, right? Yeah, so really, really good book. I think that this book does a really good job at synthesizing all the information. You can have your Mercury, Jupiter, like in all the different signs, but which signs are they? Which element is in the sign? Are they cardinal? Are they mutable? Are they fixed signs? How do all of these elements work together to create your beautiful self? And what problems will you have in your life as you progress with these signs and these placements? So, really good book. Lastly, I have a little honorable mention. Like I said, all these books will be in the description box below, but I have a quick little honorable mention. I love Five Below, right? I don't always buy from Five Below because consumerism, capitalism, waste, you know, but there's just something about getting things for cheap that I just, you know, I really, really like it. Like, I like getting stuff for cheap, you know. So I like Five Below. I think Five Below is cute. I think it's fun. I don't often buy from there, but there was this one day that I went. I'm talking really fast right now because I'm very excited. It's called Astrological Dictionary. I found this in the book section. It was literally $5, and it's Cosmic Knowledge from A to Z by Donna Woodwell. Now, this little book is actually very helpful. When I started first learning about astrology, I'm like, Chiron, North Node, Leo, like what does this mean? Like I have no clue. Like my North Node's in Leo, okay, I don't know what that means. And this is a honest frustration that I had. And this book really talks about that. It talks about quadrants, precision, ninth house, new moon, what does that mean? Mars, Libra, fire sign, evolutionary astrology, exaltation, chart angles, conjunctions. Really good pocket dictionary to have. Because something that I've noticed is that, and this is many writings, this isn't just for people who are into spirituality, but something that I've seen as an educator and being passionate about education is that people will have a lot of information with the assumption that people know what those words mean, right? So how is someone supposed to really understand the topic or the subject at hand if they don't know what half of the words mean? So this book is a really good pair with all of these books, to be honest, because there are a lot of sections that are just like, oh yes, the ninth house, and it's just like, well, I don't know what that means just yet. And this book talks about that. So really good pocket book for understanding those type of things. So yeah. Alright, okay, so that was all the books that I had that I think are really good. There's more. I have more, but I think that those are really good for the beginner, intermediate, and l'expert, just for a refresher of knowledge and for understanding all things astrology. And yeah, I'm going to stop talking now. So thank you so much for watching towards the end of this video. If you like this video, please like this video. Don't forget to comment, subscribe, follow me on my socials, and have a wonderful day. Bye.